All right, Vikings fans, here we are again. I don't know what it is. Every other year, everything that can go wrong goes wrong. Everything goes to shit. We haven't made the playoffs in back to back years since 2008 and 2009. The Zim era was just every other year, other than the two at the end where both seasons were bad. And, a small sample size with KOC, but 13-4 in his first year. And then you come back the next year, the fumbling issues, fumbling on the first drive against Tampa Bay in 2023. Then Jefferson goes down, misses half the season. Halfway through that, Kirk goes down, tears his Achilles, misses the rest of the season, and just feels like we're gearing up for another one of those years, as sad as that may seem. As loaded as the roster is, as much optimism as pretty much everything was just steeped in all offseason. Darisaw working back from the injury, going into week one, Harrison Smith dealing with the mysterious ailment. But, we're all excited for Theo Jackson. They've been hyping up Jay Ward now for a couple years. Figured we could get through that. I was never very bullish on the Justin School addition, but to backup left tackle, that the hope was that he'd be ready to start the season, but obviously that wasn't the case. School gave up the 4 pressures against Chicago. It didn't look great, but it seemed like they made some adjustments in the second half, especially in the fourth quarter, and helping to sort of mitigate the damage coming off the left side of the offensive line. But maybe Darisaw will be back for week 2. He was ruled out fairly early, and then it was just an unmitigated disaster. And by the end of our first game against Chicago, we're down Darisaw. Ryan Kelly was in the blue tent at one point with a toe. He didn't miss any time. On the last play of the game, both Jeff Okudah and Andrew Van Ginkel go down with concussions. And now, sitting here at the end of week 2, through that second game, it felt like half the players were out. Harrison Smith was out. Darisaw was out. Ryan Kelly was out. Then your backup left tackle, Justin School, goes down. Now we're on our third string left tackle in Walter Rouse. Van Ginkel's out. Grenard got hurt at one point. Luckily, he missed the one play because they were forced to call an injury timeout. But it looked rough at the time, but he worked back in and was back to his usual self. Blake Cashman's on IR. As I said, Jeff Okudah's down with the concussion. Just like one body after another. And as ugly as it's been under center for 7 of the 8 quarters thus far, wake up today, get some news via KOC from his press conference, a very vague notion that JJ McCarthy, his ankle is hurt, and we'll see how that's going to look coming up here for this Bengals game. And if you remember, I believe it was in the third quarter, he went down on a run on the sideline, and then they showed him they were spatting his cleat on the sideline, which is, never a good sign. But the idea being, like, if you just got to tape them up, sometimes they'll take that cleat off and tape them up. But if you're spatting the cleat, it can be a sign that they're afraid if they take the cleat off that it's going to start swelling up. At the time, I personally, I was just so caught up in how terrible the game was unfolding from an offensive perspective that I wasn't thinking too much about that. But now in retrospect, it's like, yeah, we should have seen that as a bad sign. I kind of just like, he was back out there. It's like, okay, maybe it wasn't anything too bad. But then Schefter follows up on O'Connell's press conference with a report of McCarthy being out 2 to 4 weeks. We have the Bengals this week at home, then the 2-week European road trip with the Steelers game in Dublin, the Browns game in England. Then we come back and we have a bye, so that'll be 4 weeks right there. So I guess if there's a silver lining to this, and he is out for the full 4 weeks with a high ankle sprain as reported, at least one of those weeks will be a bye. And the other part of the silver lining could be you get a moment to take a breath. It was when the schedule came out, I remember thinking, like, they're really not doing this kid any favors. Like, I think his superpower as a player is his poise, his ability to be present, his mental toughness, mental fortitude to sort of ride the waves of things and not be swept away by the tide, and that he should be able to handle it. But to open your career, your first career start on a Monday night against a divisional opponent, against a quarterback from your same draft class, in your hometown, against the team that you grew up rooting for, is tough. And then to come back on a short week for your home opener, your first start in your building on a Sunday night, again against a fellow quarterback from your draft class, which from a player perspective, from an organization perspective, is probably not the biggest deal, especially because, like, the Vikings couldn't draft Caleb Williams. They couldn't draft Michael Penix. They were taken ahead of them. So there's not going to be room for second guessing the organization on there. But it's another layer to the narrative. It's more noise. It's more potential questions to be asked in the process. It's just a tough start. Then you squeeze in the fact that his fiance gives birth to a baby in the middle of that week, and he misses a practice as a result of it, which, some things are bigger than football. Not many, but some things are. And the birth of your child, especially the birth of your first child, is one of those things. So it is what it is. He should have been there for that, and he should have missed that practice. But it's just it's a tough week. It's a lot going on in a week. So I think we got to give him some level of grace. So maybe a silver lining of this works out that we kind of, in a way, hit the reset button. KOC can hopefully, and he needs to get back in the lab, make some tweaks. Obviously, they got to make some tweaks for Carson Wentz to, because, he's only been here for a few weeks now. So it's my personal hatred of Carson Wentz aside. I don't care who comes in there. Peyton Manning could come in there. He's probably not going to know the entire offense in that time frame. So you're going to have to kind of pare things down. And if we needed any more reasons to just turn around and hand the ball to Jordan Mason, Aaron Jones also is going to be out with a hamstring. We'll see how long he's out for. But I love Aaron Jones. I think Aaron Jones is a very nice player for us. He was great for us last year. I think he adds a lot. The complementary nature of him and Jordan Mason is fantastic. I was very excited about that coming into the season. But after that first game, if you needed to see anything to decide, we're going to put Jordan Mason out there first. That's all you needed to see. That's all you needed to see. And then once again, first two drives go to Aaron Jones. Then we mix in Jordan Mason. Jordan Mason had less than 10 carries in that game. In a game that was all field goals until the Vikings allowed the Falcons to get a touchdown because the clock was more important, and it was going to be a 2-score game either way. So they said, let them score. We need to preserve some clock. That's the only touchdown of the game. It was all field goals. It was all close. So why is Jordan Mason not touching the ball? He's a hammerhead. So we need to just lean on Jordan Mason now, make things easier for Carson Wentz coming in as he's still getting adjusted to the playbook, and then carry that over to when J.J. McCarthy comes back. Now, the downside is this was supposed to be the soft part of the schedule. The Bears are who we thought they were. The Falcons last year, I believe they were 6-2, and then they kind of fell apart when Kirk went in the tank. But the Falcons were a non-elite team that had playoff potential. So you don't want to say that it's a soft situation, but you're getting them early. It was Michael Penix's 5th start, I believe, going up against a Brian Flores defense. And you got Cleveland in here. Pittsburgh weren't entirely sure what they were going to be. Aaron Rodgers has looked good, and obviously they got a lot of talented pieces on that defense. And Cincinnati, obviously you got Joe Burrow, you got Jamar Chase, you got T. Higgins, you got Trey Hendrickson, and then just kind of a mixed bag of nothing, pretty much. So then if JJ misses the full 4 weeks, he comes back after the bye, he's coming back to the Philadelphia Eagles. Then on a short week, the Los Angeles Chargers, who, as I record this, have doubled up the Las Vegas Raiders 20-9 right now with under 3 minutes to go as I record. Then Baltimore. That's a rough slate. That's a rough slate to put the kid back in. But especially when he hasn't had the reps then in the previous 4 weeks to work through some of the growing pains. But there'll be another piece coming out. Well, I'll get into deeper detail about Kevin O'Connell's failures in that game. And, it's too early to make any judgments on JJ McCarthy. Obviously, I've been incredibly high on him. I was incredibly high on him before we even drafted him. He was the guy I wanted them to draft. And so, of course, I'm going to make what sounds like excuses. And they are excuses. But sometimes we love as a society to say there's no excuses. But there are excuses. There are legitimate excuses for things. You don't want to ever be reliant on excuses. Excuses usually come when there was a failure of some sort. And it's like, it doesn't really matter what the excuses are because ultimately the failure is the failure. But there are excuses if we're going to parse through the details and the nuance. But we can't give up on the kid after 2 games. There's a laundry list of Super Bowl winning quarterbacks, Hall of Fame quarterbacks that did not look very good through 2 games. It's going to take some time. It is what it is. KOC did not do him any favors. And we could start with not turning around and handing the ball to Jordan Mason. That's what got the offense rolling. There's no quick game. We haven't had any quick game in 2 years. I see now I'm getting into the details. I'm going to save that for another piece. But JJ McCarthy out 2 to 4 weeks. Can Carson Wentz get us back on track? Just having a veteran presence in there who's been there, who's done that, who isn't as wide-eyed, going through this for the very first time. Because we have talent. If we get Darisaw back, like at this point, if Darisaw can walk, we need him on the field. I understand, you're coming back from a devastating injury. You would like the guy to be at 100% before you put him back out there. But we're kind of at the point where it's like, brother, if you're at 95%, that's good enough. We need you out there. Ryan Kelly, I would assume, is going to miss this game. He has some history of concussions. Concussions are obviously a thing in the modern age that we don't take lightly. It's not like, an ankle where it's like, okay, is it a high ankle? No. Okay. Can we tape it up? Can you gut through it? Is it a pain tolerance thing? Like concussions are not a pain tolerance thing. So I'm expecting him to be out. And he was a guy that, I all off season, my biggest concern was Ryan Kelly getting hurt. A lot of people were concerned about the receiver situation with Jordan Addison's suspension or the cornerback depth and things like that. And I'm not saying that it's not fair to be, or it wasn't fair to be concerned about those things. But for me, it was if Ryan Kelly gets hurt, and he does have a history of getting hurt in a variety of ways, do we really want Michael Juergens out there? If you listen to Judd's camp notes, if you watch Judd's camp notes on Purple Daily, multiple reports of botched snaps with Michael Juergens out there. He's not a natural center. They're converting him from guard. I was never super comfortable with it. And there's not a ton of great centers out there. So it's like, who are you going to go get? And it's like, well, go get someone that's played center in the league. First and foremost, that might be helpful. So we're going to have to deal with that. There was a couple high snaps, a semi-botched snap. So we got to mitigate that. But Donovan Jackson's played really well. Will Fries has played pretty well. I think they were both much better in the first game than the second game. For Donovan Jackson, it's like, you're expecting to have Ryan Kelly and Darisaw on either side of you. And then you end up with Justin School, and then Walter Rouse and Michael Juergens on the 2 sides. You got a Pro Bowl caliber player. It's crazy that Darisaw hasn't made a Pro Bowl, but a Pro Bowl caliber player, Ryan Kelly, multiple time former Pro Bowler, a vet, to then By the second half of that game, Donovan Jackson is in his second game. His second game as a professional. And he has more experience than the guys on either side of him. He had taken more snaps than Walter Rouse took last year as a starting offensive lineman, more snaps than Michael Juergens took last year as a starting offensive lineman. I'm sure maybe they got some special team snaps, but by the second half of his second game, Donovan Jackson has more professional experience than the two guys on either side of him. Like, that's not the position you want to put him in. So just as a whole, especially switching centers, Ryan Kelly's making the protection calls. It's just something to not have to put on your young quarterback's plate. He goes out. So now Juergens is making the protection calls. So on top of just having inferior talent out there, now the communication suffers. They're not on the same page with the protections. And it just got worse and worse and worse as the game went on. So can Carson Wentz mitigate some of that? If we get Darisaw back, that will mitigate some of that. Again, Carson Wentz, as much as I don't like him, has been around the block. He is prone to do some Nick Mullins-esque things, but albeit with more arm talent. But can he buoy the situation? Joe Burrow is going to be out. Hopefully Jake Browning got all his revenge out a couple years ago and is not frothing at the mouth looking for revenge against ultimately a regime that had nothing to do with him. Mike Zimmer was not there. Rick Spielman was not there, or is not there. Obviously Jamar and T and Trey Hendrickson are problems, but if we have Darisaw back, you have Darisaw and O'Neal, they can hopefully, they'll win some, lose some, but they can prevent Trey Hendrickson from completely wrecking the game. And if we've been getting consistent pressure, like the defensive front's fantastic, even without Andrew Van Ginkel. Like Grenard was all over the place. Javon Hargrave is a monster. Jonathan Allen, I don't believe has a sack yet, but he's been getting a ton of pressure. So they can get some pressure on Jake Browning because the Bengals do not have a great offensive line. Like there is a path here to win this game, get to 2-1, get the 2 overseas games. We'll see what the Steelers look like. The Browns don't look very good. Again, you got to contend with Myles Garrett, and they have a handful of studs. But ultimately, overall, like if you can get pressure on Joe Flacco ain't moving around. Like these next 3 games with competent play calling, competent quarterback play, and Darisaw back in the lineup, and hopefully at some point in that 3-game stretch, we also get Ryan Kelly back. All 3 of those games are winnable games. Now, if they handle business, then there's going to be the whole question of, well, if Carson Wentz is playing really well, there's going to be the whole debate of, can you go back to McCarthy now? Well, they gambled everything on him because they didn't bring Darnold back. They didn't bring Aaron Rodgers in. So you have to go back to him. You can't just give up on him after 2 games. But then you got to remember, like, there's still seasoning to be done. So I'm not really sure what the best overall outcome for these next 3 games is. I think it's probably that we win, but Carson Wentz is not, like, lighting the world on fire. Like there's some turnovers in there, but at least there's some semblance of moving the ball. And a lot of it has to do with Kevin O'Connell committing to the run, handing the ball to Jordan Mason, riding the run game, and Wentz just making some plays when he needs to make them, that he doesn't look like a stud again, where you're really questioning, like, oh, well, we kind of have a history. Randall Cunningham coming in 98. And Case Keenum in 2017, Sam Bradford in 2016, of these quarterbacks coming in off the street and leading us somewhere. I mean, in 2016, we didn't even make the playoffs, but you know what I mean. So I don't know. It's a tough break for JJ. It's a tough week. Again, their very first professional game in your hometown against a team you grew up rooting for on Monday night. You win it in like all-time dramatic fashion. Then you have your first child. Then you have your first home start on Sunday night TV. and just get smoked. And then you get a high ankle sprain, you're out 2 to 4 weeks. So I don't know. We just need to get to the middle of the season where you're sort of just in the grind of it all. We're not on prime time every week. There's not all this extra stuff happening. For him personally, you get the 2 to 4 weeks where, I question if he's even going to make the overseas trip. And, he can spend some time with his young family and something like that and sort of move away from the high emotions that are all just happen here in the span of a week, like literally within the span of 7 days. Think about just the emotional highs and lows and just all the stuff happening. Like we get into the middle of the season and just settle in, and hopefully by the end of the year, hopefully by the middle of the season, by the end of the year, by next year, by the end of next season, the insanity of the last 7 days is just an afterthought that's just sort of a memory we can think back on. Like, oh, you remember that one crazy week to start the season? But as I started this show out with, every other year, man, every other year, it just feels like disaster strikes. So they have the talent and the depth is being tested, and there's certain key positions where we don't have the depth. But overall, I think they've got some solid depth here and there that we can just get semi-healthy here. We can see what this team's actually made of. But I don't know. Stay tuned. There's going to be a couple more episodes coming out very shortly. And then later in the week, we'll do a preview of the Bengals game. So until next time, Skol Vikes.